Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Friday. It's Daryl here. It is bright and freaking early, man. It's 3:30 a.m. on the dot here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, I have a video downloading right now that I had all set to go from yesterday because I downloaded two videos already yesterday, so I had one all set already to go today. And this is an interesting too. It's about the mayor of Tampa catching 25 kilos off the coast of Florida, and I thought it was kind of fishy when I read the article. All right, anyway, that's downloading this morning. I found another article that I have some thoughts on, and I might have a different opinion than most people might figure. You know, most people figure this is a progressive. I'm progressive, liberal, Democrat. Right now in my life, I wasn't always. And I might have a different opinion than you might think on this. This is the story of Mary McCarthy suing the airlines, the Southwest Airlines, for racial profiling for her and her daughter. And I could understand what she's saying. I could understand her point. But the more I started reading articles and information from 10 years ago, from CNN, from Time articles, from Las Vegas trafficking information, and I'm not sure I totally agree with her. Okay, let's start at the beginning here. Southwest Airlines is being sued by Mary McCarthy. This happened in 2021, and when she landed in Denver, the police stopped her and questioned her about her own daughter. Her own daughter is biracial, is part black and part Caucasian, and Mary is white. You'll see the picture on my thumbnail. And apparently while they were flying, nobody talked to them, everything seemed normal on the plane, and when they landed, the police were there to greet them and question them because they were suspected in child trafficking because of the apparent difference in race between her and her child. This is her natural child. She gave birth to this child, which I think part of it is, I don't know. I'm trying to imagine what, using empathy, trying to imagine what it must be like, the issues, the problems, the things you might have to deal with when you give birth to a biracial child. And I'm wondering if that might have played a role in this. Some of her defensiveness or past problems with issues. I imagine there's different issues that somebody that has a biracial child must have to deal with. And I could understand her being offended. She gave birth to this child, and now she's being questioned by the police and being suspected of child. I could understand her instant anger. But the more I looked into this, I really think I could understand why she was questioned somewhat. And I think it might be actually be a good thing. If there's such a thing as positive racial profiling, I would think this is it. And don't turn the channel yet. Don't start commenting yet. All right. So the first thing I did is I started looking up. Mary McCarthy says in this video, she says that one of her points is that child sex trafficking is almost infinitesimal amount is done by airplane. And she was right on that. I found an article it'll be down below. This is from Las Vegas. One of the most troubling things I read was that the most child sex trafficking is in the western United States, Nevada, especially California. And this is the troubling part, that it happens during Super Bowl weekend, like especially in Las Vegas, Nevada, that area with betting. And you see, I'm picturing the people that are putting money into this, that are buying these services from these traffickers. These are what guys that are just going on vacation from their families, going to Las Vegas. I'm not trying to stereotype here, but I think a lot of you got to look at the people that are putting money. The other side of this, like when I talk about drugs, I talk about the people in America aren't being poisoned. The problem is addiction. The problem is all the money that if there wasn't a need, if there wasn't a demand for drugs, then there wouldn't be that much smuggling. And I'd have to think the same thing applies here. You really have to, it's not all the sex traffickers. It's the people buying this. The guy that goes on vacation with his buddies and gets a little buzz and decides to have a little fun overnight as he sees it. and goes back home, forgets all about it, and he's putting money into, because that's what it sounds like is happening here. If you look at the statistics, that's exactly what it sounds like is happening here, and that bothered me more than anything. She was right when she said that the airlines, I think only, let's maybe see, I've got all sorts of statistics. I've been up since 1:30 a.m. reading statistics on this, from 10-year-olds to the stuff from CNN and Time. The links will be down below. Because they talk about back in 2014, 2017, these articles down below, they talk, this started to become more visible. And they talk about what to look for. And they talk about how you might not want to go up and approach the child or the trafficker for your own safety or for the child's safety. Because Mary McCarthy talks in this video, if one of the Southwest air attendants just came up and talked to her and asked her, she could straighten this all out. She said that, that besides for the skin color, their facial features, their build, they look alike. They could tell that they're mother and daughter, and this kind of explains that, this older information. And it talks about Delta Airlines being trained in this in a time, I believe it's the Time article down below. Back in 2014, they were training these stewardesses how to approach this, to look for different, like raggedy clothing, a child with a voracious appetite. And there's a joke about eating airline food. I'm not picky. I love hospital food. I love airline food. I eat anything. But if the child has a voracious appetite, if there's tattoos, I guess there's actually, some traffickers actually put barcodes on what they think is their property, which is troubling. It talks about what to look for, but it also says, maybe you shouldn't approach them. So there's ambiguous recommendations for how these stewardesses, these airline people are supposed to approach this. Back to the airlines. Only 1.9% of this of sex trafficking is on planes. The vast majority, 98.6%, is by vehicle, and they mentioned especially rideshare and Uber. I imagine with younger people being tricked into getting a ride, what's it called, catfishing or whatever, where somebody pretends to be a boyfriend or something and has them travel long distance, and then when they get there, they find out it's not what they thought it was. And then it talks about the most helpful statistic down below is it's a sheet of information from Las Vegas, and it gives all the statistics about the race, the most heavily trafficked race, and that's African American. So I started thinking about this. A lot of times in the news, you see stories about a 10-year-old Caucasian girl who goes missing from the suburbs, and there's Amber Alerts across the whole country. You talk about a 10-year-old black girl that goes missing in Chicago, and nobody knows about it. Or all the Native American women that are disappearing. Thousands of Native American women and teenagers and children are disappearing every year in this country, and nobody's mentioning that. And that was a troubling statistic I found on this Las Vegas information sheet, because it says only, I think it was like 0.5% of trafficking is Native American women or teenagers or youngsters, and I'm not by 0.5. 2.5 are bicultural, which is what her daughter Mayora was. So this is the point I started to think of. When you think of racial profiling, you think of traffic stops or somebody like black people, black teenagers on the street, being searched by the police. Empty your pockets. Let me see what's in your pockets. And being pulled over more often than Caucasian people. Which there's an interesting in Connecticut. I think the FBI is getting involved because I forgot which town it was. I think it's in Greenwich, Connecticut. They found that some of the statistics have been fudged to hide racial profiling. I'll talk about that more in another video. But you talk about that, and that's racial profiling for a negative purpose. They're looking at black people as being being guilty of something, but that's not the case here. The case here is, I'm sure that these Southwest Airlines people were told that 65% of child sex trafficking, 65%, the vast majority, is black or African American kids or teenagers or women. So that, to them, that's a sign. And the fact that the parent was a different race. I mean, what they saw was what is considered a red flag. Should they have approached her? Yeah, they should have at least tried to engage the child, I imagine. But is it racial profiling? It is, but it definitely is. But it's for what I would consider a positive purpose. Like I said, a lot of times you hear across the country how it's not taken as seriously when a black child disappears or a crime committed against a black person as opposed to a white child or white person. And in this case, they're trying to save. They're thinking that this person might be in trouble. This black girl, or bicultural girl in this case, might be in trouble. And that's, and I can't help, I don't know if there's such a thing as positive racial profiling, but you see what I'm saying here. So she's suing the airline for racial profiling. But if you really look at it, yes, it is racial profiling, but I think you have to consider the purpose here. It's for a positive purpose. It's to save, to help the person that is most often victimized, which happens to be black children or black women or black girls. So if there's such a thing as positive racial profiling, this would be it. I don't understand. I think it goes back to this woman, and I'm trying to empathize. Some of the issues this woman might have gone through that might make her defensive or angry. And to file this lawsuit. I mean, we all know that attorneys love to file lawsuits too. I could picture an attorney saying, "Oh yeah, you got a case. This is definite racial profiling." But like I say, if you look at it, it's a whole different objective. For a whole different purpose. Is to help save. The victim here would be the black person, not the perpetrator. In most cases of racial profiling, if you see what I'm saying here. The links will all be down below. Like I said, the most helpful link will be down below. I don't usually put links down below that are just, I forget what they're called, PDF sheets, like just information sheets, and I'll try to make sure that link is down below. Like I said, the most troubling thing is this all happens on Super Bowl. A lot of this, the majority of it happens on Super Bowl weekend and in Las Vegas. And I picture these guys traveling from all over the country to go to Las Vegas away from their families, and this is sometimes what's going on, and they're just as guilty. And if some of these guys weren't buying this product or these victims, then it wouldn't. If you didn't have the demand, you wouldn't have the supply. Just like the same thing I talk about drugs. You have to look at the other side of this. What's the cause of this really? Is the money? Is the people buying it? This reminded me, if I have a lot of new viewers, and the viewers I've gained probably about 100 viewers in the last month. And if you don't know, this reminded me a lot of, I was sexually abused from the years. My father died when I was 9 years old from terminal brain cancer. And about 2 years later, my mother started dating a policeman, Irish policeman, good Irish policeman, much older. And he was, my mom was in her 30s. Or 40s, and he was in his 50s. He had accommodations and ribbons and all this stuff. Seriously, well-respected officer, Irish officer in the local police force. And shortly he started. He said he'd always be there. I'll always be there. You lost your father. I'll help you. I'll help you fix your bike. Seriously, and he was grooming me, and he'd start grabbing me by the crotch when my mother left. He would do this when my mother just left the room, and believe me, it got much worse. Anything you could imagine, the worst things you could imagine that could happen this happened when I was 11, 12, 13, 14. Finally, when I was 14 or 15, I took a baseball bat to him, and that made my point. And once I started to get taller and bigger, that's a whole nother story. And I just thought about how bold this guy was, how he was such a liar, and how good he was at lying, and how confident and cocky he was. It started with me sitting on the couch watching TV, and he'd come and sit down. My mother would go down to change the laundry in the basement, and he'd reach over and start pulling my pants down while she was down in the basement. You know, he'd hear her come back up the stairs. He'd sit back over, and he'd have a smile. You know, this guy wasn't human. This guy was an animal. This guy was a predator. That's what happened to me, and you got to realize what you're up against when you're talking about this kind of thing. I'll talk more about that in another video. All right, links will be down below. You guys have a great Friday.